I can feel it. You did something to my mind. Who are you? I'll tear everything down to destroy you. Today on the Comic Book Report, we're going to be looking at the Devil's Reign Omnibus from Marvel Comics. Is this the best Daredevil event? Stay tuned and find out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And as I mentioned at the jump, we're going to be looking at what I think could be the best Daredevil event yet. We're going to be looking at Devil's Reign by Chip Zdarsky. This omnibus not only includes the events, but we have all of the tie-in issues here, and it is something to behold. I can't wait to talk more about this omnibus, but before we do, I just want to thank the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link in this video's description, and if you see something you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout. The Comic Book Report, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support the channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's omnibus review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by various writers, including Chip Zdarsky and Gary Duggan, amongst others. It was illustrated by various artists, including Marco Cacchetto and Rafael de la Torre, amongst others. The comics in this volume were first published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2022. The volume itself collects Devil's Reign issues 1 through 6, Spider-Woman issue 18 and 19, Daredevil Woman Without Fear issues 1 through 3, Devil's Reign Superior 4 issues 1 through 3, Devil's Reign Villains for Hire issues 1 through 3, Devil's Reign Winter Soldier, Devil's Reign X-Men issues 1 through 3, Devil's Reign Spider-Man, Moon Knight issue 8, Devil's Reign Moon Knight, and Devil's Reign Omega. This is an oversized hardcover edition with glossy print paper stock, a sewn binding, and a total of 680 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and with that out of the way, we can take another look at today's omnibus. I will say this is the direct market or DM cover for this omnibus. I'll go ahead and throw up a thumbnail for the standard just so you can compare the two. I also believe the image on the bottom of the spine is a bit different in the standard edition as well. I really love the DM cover. I love seeing the Daredevil and Elektra on the front. I just think it looks really great. The standard is quite lovely as well though. Both have this really interesting kind of border frame around it. The spine is pretty crisp, just having the name of the omnibus. Nothing too frilly or overly interesting there on the spine. I actually wonder if we could have gotten maybe a better font or design for the spine. But other than that, that's a pretty standard spine. The back is pretty fun. It's a really shocking shade of red, and we have a bunch of little images or thumbnails of different pieces throughout the omnibus, some blurbing, pricing information, what it collects, things like that. I think other than the cover itself, I would have loved to see a bit more as far as the dust jacket design, but nothing too crazy to report here. Just wanted to showcase it for all of you. Okay, and I want to do one final look at this dust jacket now. This time I won't just show you all the sides, I'll also show the interior flaps and get everything at a glance so you can take one look for yourself, examine everything, and kind of make your own determination. I think even the interior flaps are a bit straightforward as well. I think overall the dust jacket design just didn't really wow me with this release. I really like the direct market cover, and I do think the standard cover is quite striking as well. But beyond that, this collection just didn't really wow me as far as that's concerned. I do like that we get a showcasing of some of the artwork on this dust jacket that we see in the interior of the book. That's always nice to see, but other than that, not too much to report there. As far as its under the dust jacket artwork, we have a nice wraparound image from a battle we have within this book. Really exciting to see. We have a lot of characters showcased that are all included in this event, so I really like to see that at a glance. I do think the art they chose for the under the dust jacket feels fairly appropriate. I think even that That could have maybe been tuned in, but I do like seeing it. I think that they did still make a great choice for that. Funny that they didn't go for the full wraparound here. They still have the spine showing, but you still get enough of the art. And just one more thing before we start in the collection, just a quick look at the binding. This is the sewn binding, and I will say I was pleasantly surprised. My copy laid surprisingly flat, really exciting there. You'll get to see as I flip through and make your own determination, but I think that this is one of the best bound editions I've had recently, especially from Marvel. Really good stuff here. Okay, and now we can go ahead and jump into the collection proper. We have a terrific little title page with the Kingpin on it. Eventually, we have this kind of creator-mapped table of contents. I say table of contents kind of loosely. A lot of the modern omnibuses have this over at Marvel, where we don't have a proper, like, page-counted table of contents or anything like that. No, rather, they break down the issues that are included in the set, or the handful of issues, and we have kind of attributions of who created it, things like that. It's still a great way to see what's in this collection, even if we don't have a proper on this page as this issue, something like that. After that, we're right into issue 1 of Devil's Reign, this Marvel Comics event. It is a 6-issue miniseries with a good handful of tie-ins, along with that Devil's Reign Omega issue. I already went over the contents of this volume earlier in the video, but suffice it to say, we kick off with all 6 issues of the event, before we ultimately get a bunch of the different tie-in issues, and then this whole omnibus culminates with the Devil's Reign Omega, which is kind of like an epilogue to the collection and sets up the new status quo for Daredevil and some of these heroes that are involved in this event. As far as how the mapping is for this book, I think it could have been better, but I think that this is in some ways the best we were maybe going to get. A lot of event omnibuses, particularly from Marvel, will do this, where we have the main event at the beginning of the book, and then we have all of the tie-ins afterward. I think that that's totally fine. We get all of the tie-ins and all the issues that are pertinent, but it's not like the issues are staggered or braided. And I think that that can be a little bit confusing because some of the tie-ins take place during some of the issues of the main event. So it would be hard to map it in a way that made more logical sense, you know, like, because it's hard to do issue 1 of Devil's Reign, then these couple tie-ins, then issue 2, if the events happen kind of in the middle of one of the issues. Does that make sense? All that to say, I think it's mapped fine. I don't really know how better to have done it without splitting issues up, and I personally don't prefer that even more so than this. So I think it's pretty good, and I think when you read the whole event, you get all of the major kind of spoilers of the events, you get the content of the actual event itself. So when you read tie-ins, it just kind of fills out the story you've already read, rather than trying to read some of the tie-ins and juggle back and forth with the event and maybe risk spoiling something for yourself. At any rate, I think it is a fun way to do it overall, and this is a really good event. A couple of other omnibuses that did the same thing are like the House of M omnibus, for example, another event book that we got the main House of M event and then all of the tie-ins after the fact. I know Avengers vs. X-Men omnibus did the same thing. There's a lot of examples of something like this. So anyway, this event itself, it takes place during an era where Kingpin has been mayor of New York City. This was established some time ago. He's been in power for a long time now, and we just knew that there was a ticking clock on that. I think as comic fans, we knew that the whole house of cards would come crashing down, probably catastrophically at some point. So there was a really nice lead in to this event, The Devil's Reign. That title, of course, is in reference to Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, being in power in New York. So anyway, this all kicks off when basically Kingpin has been recently married to Typhoid Mary, and he's going in kind of one of his vacation homes, and he stumbles across sort of a list of files where he has like secrets or identities of different superheroes, and kind of just, this is like his little black box of secrets that he keeps to kind of have leverage on people. And he stumbles across a file named Daredevil or Daredevil's Secret Identity or what have you, and when he opens it up, the pages are essentially blank. But he knows in his knower that there should be actual written information here. He basically deduces that he once knew who Daredevil was, and that something happened to his mind that he blames Daredevil for erasing this information. He feels like this is a gross violation, and he can't stomach it. He can't handle it. So instead of kind of going off into the sunset with his new bride, he is just filled with fury. And he, of course, confronts Daredevil and says, "Who are you? Why have you done this?" And Daredevil kind of cheekily says, "Sorry, Wilson, it's a secret identity for a reason," and leaves. But this he cannot abide. Based on these actions from Daredevil, Kingpin basically makes it illegal to be a vigilante, and he establishes his own branch of the Thunderbolts, populated with a bunch of notorious villains, to both police New York, but also to round up all of these superheroes who are practicing illegally in New York City. This is a really, really fun kickoff to this event, and it really establishes a fun just set of conflicts for not only Daredevil, but a lot of the costume heroes across New York City, which is kind of the hub for all this superhero activity, especially in the Marvel Universe. Really enjoyed this. There are very clear connections to something like Marvel's Civil War, another fantastic event book from back in the day that had a superhero registration act where basically vigilantes had to sign up with the government, have their identities revealed, and kind of basically be government registered superheroes. Otherwise, they were outlawed. This is a different kind of reform where basically all vigilantes are completely outlawed. But there are still some very real parallels there between Civil War and this Devil's Reign event, and even some of the characters saying, hey, we don't want another superhero registration act, we have to be careful, how are we going to handle this? And pretty early on, we have some of the heroes just straight up arrested and thrown into kind of super security jails. They have kind of power inhibitors and are just thrown in there, like Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm Richards of the Fantastic Four get arrested. We have Moon Knight get arrested. And we have like kind of some of the street heroes like Luke Cage and Jessica Jones kind of saying, how are we going to stop this? Maybe we should get our daughter and get out of here, but they get caught up and have to save the day. We have characters like Spider-Man. Of course, we have Daredevil and Daredevil Woman Without Fear, Elektra, in the fray here. We have some villains for hire. These are some of the Thunderbolts under Kingpin. They're involved in this whole story arc as well, and we have some tie-ins with them. Really compelling, just roster of heroes attached to this series, but that's essentially the setup. We basically have Kingpin and his Thunderbolts trying to take out all the superheroes, and in the background we actually have Kingpin wanting more and more power, and he finds out that whatever messed with his mind had to involve the Purple Man, and so Kingpin kind of tries to get him under his sway and trying to manipulate things with his powers. He finds out that the Purple Men's children were involved, and now Kingpin wants to kidnap the children and basically use their powers to kind of help, not mind control, but maybe persuade all of New York to elect him mayor again, and to do more devious things than even that. We have Doc Ock showing up to basically assist Kingpin in developing this technology of using the Purple Man and the Purple Children's powers to assist his means. But we find out that the reason Doc Ock is doing this is to gain access to Reed Richards' labs for unknown reasons at first. Anyway, everything kind of comes to a head. We have all of these different factions fighting each other. We have some of the heroes trying to protect the Purple Children. We have Daredevil just wanting to destroy Kingpin. And in the midst of this, we have Kingpin finding out that it is Matt Murdock who is Daredevil. He gets the information again, and we have kind of an homage this time to Born Again, a fantastic Daredevil story where Kingpin finds out Matt Murdock's identity and kind of burns his life to the ground. And in a similar fashion, we have Kingpin absolutely furious when he finds out who Daredevil actually is. He goes to Daredevil's apartment, essentially, and again, this is a spoiler video, but again, big spoiler here, and he murders him. Or does he? The person there who he thinks is Matt Murdock, who looks like Matt Murdock, who talks like Matt Murdock, and who's in Matt Murdock's apartment, is actually his twin brother, Mike Murdock, who was a kind of figment of Matt Murdock's imagination. He's someone he used as a cover, but it was just him masquerading as his own twin brother. This is a throwback to the original Daredevil comics back in the Silver Age. But in recent Daredevil story arcs, this kind of persona that Matt would put on has had his own identity, has had his own existence, thanks to this kind of magical stone. Anyway, there's been a Mike Murdock running around New York. There's some people who know Mike Murdock as Mike, like Kingpin's son, who's his up-and-coming Kingpin in New York. But Matt basically uses Mike to stand in for him while Matt is supposedly getting into a rehab facility. But we know that's really a cover so that Daredevil could do prison time. This is all having to do with the Zdarsky era of Daredevil, so if this sounds a little unfamiliar, don't worry about it too much. All that to say, in the climax of Devil's Reign, we have the Kingpin murder Mike Murdock. Really dramatic event, super intense. This spins out in a lot of really interesting ways, but essentially, at the end of this story arc, and I am kind of jumping around, leaving a few gaps for you, especially if you want to read this for yourself, essentially the Kingpin is stopped. He ends up fleeing with his wife. There's a definite power vacuum here, and we actually have Luke Cage become mayor of New York City. That was definitely a subplot as well, trying to get a hero in the position of power. But we basically have Kingpin sail away. We have Luke Cage kind of ascended to mayor. We have the Kingpin's son becoming the new Kingpin in New York. And we have this kind of refreshed status quo. With Mike Murdock dead, but the world believing it's Matt Murdock, we essentially have Daredevil with no civilian identity to go off and do Daredevil things, which is revealed in this to basically be joining Elektra to stop the Hand. Very cool, and this kicks off Zdarsky's new issue 1 at the back half of his Daredevil run. And that's kind of where Daredevil ends this storyline, and it's going to pick up again in the additional pages of the Zdarsky era of Daredevil. But this is a really fun, just refreshing of the status quo. We have Kingpin now not in power and kind of in the wind. We have a new up-and-coming Kingpin in his son, and we have a lot of these Marvel heroes kind of scrambling to figure out what happens next. Even though Luke Cage is mayor, we still have the Thunderbolts in play here. We still have some of the superheroism around New York basically being illegal, and it's just a really fascinating resolution to this book. They address some of these in the Omega issue at the end of the book. But basically, this is the Daredevil Devil's Reign event. Outside of the main series, we do have a great handful of tie-ins. We have Doc Ock's adventures with his Superior 4, where basically he uses Reed Richards' bridge technology to find all of the different variant Otto Octaviuses from different universes. There's one where Doc Ock is a Ghost Rider, another one where he's basically Wolverine, another one where he's like the Hulk, and one where he's a Sorcerer Supreme, and so on and so on. And we basically have Doc Ock wanting to make like a council of Doc Ocks and then ultimately just be the strongest in the universe. Those tie-ins were some of the weakest, in my opinion, in this book. I was just not as interested. I feel like the Doc Ock we were given was really not the most compelling version of this character. There were some nods to Superior Spider-Man and how basically Doc Ock doesn't have memories of that period. But again, these issues kind of fell flat for me. I think issues that I felt like were much better were things like Villains for Hire. These are a couple issues that followed the Kingpin's kind of policing force in the new Thunderbolts. We had them led by U.S. Agent, with one of the villainous woman symbiote characters. I think her name is Agony, perhaps. We have Rhino, we have the female Electro, and a couple others. This was a really fun group. Some of them were straight up still evil villains. The other ones were kind of good, but sort of caught up in all of this for the wrong reasons. And it was a fascinating story arc. We have U.S. Agent basically trying to embed himself in this evil organization to help topple the Kingpin. And those were a fun few issues. Another couple I really liked were the X-Men tie-ins. There were about 3 issues in this collection, and they predominantly followed Emma Frost. We had bits of Elektra in them as well, but it basically has to do with not only flashback sequences between Emma Frost and the Kingpin, and also kind of involved with Elektra, but we also have, what does X-Men and the mutants look like in New York when this law is passed? Don't they have amnesty because they're Krakoan nationals now during this whole Krakoa era? And anyway, I thought that these tie-ins were a lot of fun. There were a lot of really, really great moments here that I enjoyed. One of my particular favorite scenes was actually Emma Frost sort of getting into the mind of Spider-Man at this time and basically seeing Peter Parker's really tragic life. And basically there's this sweet moment where Emma's just like, thank you for all that you do, kind of with all the pain you carry. Anyway, those crossovers were really fun. The Spider-Man issue we get to that crosses over, we have kind of the Ben Reilly Spider-Man at this time. That one was okay. The Moon Knight crossover issue or 2 were a lot of fun. The part where Moon Knight, Mark Spector, is in prison. There's this kind of insinuation that he kind of put himself in prison to get vengeance on someone who was in that same prison. This issue or 2 were pretty violent, but they were just solidly done Moon Knight fare, I felt. And like I said, there are so many other tie-ins. I labeled them all at the front for you to just kind of get an idea of what's in this book. Winter Soldier, we have Bucky basically trying to steal files that Kingpin has on lockdown. Another really fun one there. I love the art in that one. But yeah, some of these tie-ins are better quality than others, but I think overall, this really does help pad out this event, and I do think that this was one of Marvel's more successful recent events. It's maybe not my favorite event, but it was a lot more fun than I even expected, and I think it's safely my favorite Daredevil event. The only one I can think of, too, is like Shadowland, which I do not like myself, but yeah, I think that this was really fun, a really great sense of stakes, and I think it does pivot kind of the power within the Marvel Universe in a way that I just really enjoyed. I know they announced the first Chip Zdarsky Daredevil Omnibus coming out later this year. I highly suspect that a Volume 2 would include at least the main issues of this miniseries along with kind of the back half of the Zdarsky run. I don't know that this omnibus is essential for every collector out there, even if you're a rabid Daredevil fan, but I will say if you're a fan of Marvel events and you do like Daredevil, I think that this brings a lot to the table. Another couple tie-ins I should mention that were in this as well is the 3 issues of Daredevil Woman Without Fear that follow Elektra. This was really fun. We got some great backstory between her and her relationship with Matt Murdock, what she feels being the Daredevil Woman Without Fear, and she has some really great kind of tie-ins to her past, and I think it does successfully set up what her and Matt Murdock are going to do to stop the Hand moving forward after this event. So those couple issues are really important, not just tying into Devil's Reign, but to really set up what happens with Daredevil after this point as well. The art is terrific in those issues as well, and it has her also battling Kraven the Hunter, which was a ton of fun to read. But anyway, like I said, the tie-ins are a mixed bag of quality. I don't know that many of them were absolutely essential, but if you like this event in general, it could be worthwhile to pick up this omnibus. I do also believe all of these were included in different trade paperbacks during this Devil's Reign era, so if you're a fan of paperbacks, you can, I believe, collect the entirety of this omnibus as far as the issues included in the various trade paperbacks. This is not an overly large omnibus, and yet I think it really does pack a fun punch. The event, like I said, was really, really well done. I really like the pacing in it. I feel like we had a really great selection of primary characters. It leaned in on Daredevil just enough to still feel like a Daredevil event, but overall, this is definitely a Marvel event, and that's really fun for itself too. The tie-ins, again, are pretty fun here and there. I also think that this is a really fun omnibus if you're a fan of Luke Cage, as he has a pretty important role to play, kind of setting himself up to be mayor. Really like that. I think that it was a really good use of this character. It made a lot of sense in context of this story, and frankly, it was just really good to see him get a little bit more spotlight as a character. As far as extras for this collection go, as you can see here, it is basically just one gigantic variant cover art gallery, which was a ton of fun to see. We have a couple other smaller extras kind of behind the scenes at the back, but most of the extras for this book are just the variant covers, but they're all this full page for the most part here, and they're beautiful. I cannot believe how many variant covers we got for the issues in this collection, but they're all pretty great. I'm so happy that Marvel saw fit to give us this really just treasure trove of extras in the form of all these covers at the back. Really just like seeing it. It showcases a lot of really fantastic artistic talent, and it was a great way to pad out this book, which was already quite small, into something a little more sizable. And I think if you are a comic book art fan, especially if you like a lot of the modern artists, this can really be a selling point or asset for this collection if you're on the fence. Like I said, it's one of the larger kind of sections of extras at the back of an omnibus I've read in a while. And again, for fans of variant cover art, this is a really big, like I said, treasure trove. Very, very cool stuff here. After all the cover art, we're going to be skipping ahead a bit. I wanted to show we do have some black and white kind of behind the scenes outlines and kind of, again, just different little added features as well, with the bulk of the extras still being those variant covers. But yeah, a really well-made omnibus, and I think that now all that's left to do is to give Devil's Reign Omnibus a grade. Okay, for a very fun modern Marvel event, and probably the best Daredevil event to date, the Comic Book Report is going to give the Devil's Reign Omnibus a B. The tie-ins were a bit of a mixed bag, but more hits than misses for this reader. I love to see all the variant covers we got at the back of this omnibus. Overall, it was really well put together, even if it was a bit smaller for a big omnibus fan like me. But this was still, like I said, a really worthwhile event. If you like Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil, this is definitely a big peak in that run, and I think that this event was given a lot of care. I really like the characters we have throughout this book. It was a ton of fun to read, but let me know what you think of the Devil's Reign Omnibus in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. This has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, a comment, and maybe share it with a friend. Thank you so much, and have a good one.